Hi, I'm Matt, and this is my wife, Jamie. We are part-time RVers up in Minnesota, and we have a long-term goal of going full-time, but in the meantime, our goal is to camp at every state park in Minnesota. We have 23 of the 67 parks checked off, and we also started renting out our camper last summer. Halfway through July, we had a insurance payment coming up, and we thought, hey, let's see if we can rent out our camper once or twice and help pay insurance, maybe make a camper payment or two. And turns out the demand was a lot more than we thought, and our camper ended up getting rented out almost every weekend. So we thought we'd do a video talking about who we use, how the system works, what to expect, some tips, some pros, cons, and we'll also talk about how much money we made doing it. So we use Outdoorsy.com, and think of Outdoorsy.com like an Airbnb for your RV. They're a go-between between you and a person renting your RV. They handle all the advertising, the booking, they handle the money exchanges, security deposit, they even provide things like roadside assistance for your customer. But before you start, you want to make sure you have the right RV to rent. And a good way to do that is to actually go to Outdoorsy.com and do some research on what campers are getting rented out and what aren't. So you can go to Outdoorsy.com, and if you click on an ad for a camper that might be similar to yours, you'll see a calendar. And if you look on that calendar, you can actually see when that camper is getting booked, when it's available and when it's not. And that'll give you a really good idea of what campers are popular and what aren't. I've kind of noticed that campers that are more than 10 years old aren't getting rented out as much. Campers that aren't in nice condition, campers that don't have good ads, good descriptions aren't getting rented out. It seems like family bunkhouse campers are very popular, small ones and even large ones. And anyways, doing some research can give you a good idea if your camper's a good fit. You also want to make sure you have the time and flexibility to do this, because you're going to have to work around people picking up your camper for pickup times, drop-off times. You got to have some extra time and be flexible. Now, if you decide that it's a good fit and you want to go ahead and use Outdoorsy.com or RV Share, we use that as well, but we're mostly going to focus on Outdoorsy for this video. First thing you have to do is put together an ad to submit to Outdoorsy. One of the most important things in your ad, you want to have a good description of your camper. So put yourself in the shoes of somebody that would be renting out a camper. Any questions that you might think of, obviously your customer is going to have those questions too. And a lot of people that rent campers don't have a lot of experience. So in your description, be detailed. Talk about how much your camper weighs, what kind of vehicle can tow it, what comes with your camper, what to expect for drop-off times, pickup times, things like that. The more detail, the better. The less questions your customer is going to have. It's just going to make the whole process easier. And you're also going to want to take a lot of good pictures. I'm amazed at doing some research how poorly people advertise their campers with pictures. Sometimes they'll just have one picture, or they'll use a stock internet picture. Sometimes they'll take pictures of their family at the dinette and all their stuff out front. And you want to make your camper look appealing. Think of it like staging a house. Jamie did a lot of our pictures and can talk a little bit more about how she did that.
I went through a lot of blogs and I watched a lot of YouTube videos on what people had previously done. There weren't a lot of videos out there that were overly helpful specifically for staging the RV and the things that you should have in it for renting it out. What I did see is there were several campers that were kind of overstaged because realistically, when you go take the camper out on a trip, a bunch of that's going to have to be moved. And then you have on the other end of things where campers were not staged at all. And they didn't get rented out as much. So I kind of took an in-between approach, and I put all the bedding on the beds, and we did one picture on the wall and a couple cute pillows, but they're functional for the pictures for renting it out. And when people come to then pick up your camper, it's not such a huge difference between fully staged and what the camper looks like when they're actually coming to pick it up.
So after you put together a good ad, you submit it to Outdoorsy and you give them your personal information, your banking information, because they're going to handle all the money exchanges. They'll approve your ad, and they'll actually give you a suggested price of what they think your camper should rent for per night. They suggested $118 a night for ours. We looked around, we wanted to be very competitive, so we actually lowered ours to $114, and that turned out to be a good price point. You also want to make sure your RV is ready to go. You want to make sure all the maintenance is done, has good tires, if there's any broken trim or anything that needs to be fixed up, go ahead and fix that before we even put the ad out. We kind of made a mistake here where we put the ad out. We got a rental within 48 hours. Somebody had booked it for the following weekend. So we were kind of in a scramble. The maintenance stuff was done, but we were kind of in a scramble because we wanted to buy new bedding for it. We went and bought 5 camping chairs and some different storage solutions. But ideally you'd want to have that all done before you put the ad out. And Jamie's going to talk a little bit about what we include in our camper for the rental.
So partly why we weren't fully prepared for a rental 48 hours after we put it on Outdoorsy was because we didn't want to go spend all this money and then we just didn't realistically know how many people were going to rent it. But what I did land on was there were some people that said, oh, treat it like an Airbnb. Provide everything the camping people will need. Everyone who's renting it out will need. Well, then on the other side, there are these people that said provide minimal amount of things and then charge extra for everything you provide. So I kind of went middle of the road, and we provide for free. We do the cooking utensils, paper towels, paper plates, forks, plastic forks and spoons, all those things. Couple rolls of toilet paper, towel paper, pots and pans, dish rags and soap, cleaning supplies for when they're bringing the camper back. And then a few of the things outside will be like the fire starting kit with sticks, a tool kit, 1 full propane tank. Our camper has 2 propane tanks on it, so we make sure that one is completely full, and usually the other one is about half full, but we guarantee 1 full propane tank. And this fall we actually added a little hammock, which should be fun. And then initially I did provide bedding on each bed. So we have a queen size bed, 2, the bunks, and then obviously the dinette that folds out. And I was putting the sheets on, the comforters, pillows, everything. And I came to find out that people they were expecting to just bring their own bedding. So even though on the ad I was saying that will be provided, they still brought their own bedding. And after the amount of work I went through, because you put all that bedding on, then they come back and you have to then wash all of the bedding and put it back on. It was not worth the time, especially because people probably just feel more comfortable with their own bedding. So now we use that as an add-on. So if they do want bedding, it's $10 per bed. And there are other add-ons you can do, say for like the waste tanks. If people don't want to empty them themselves, we charge $30. If they don't want to clean the camper, we'll clean it for $30 or $40. So there are some add-ons you can do that the renters can choose to do if they want. And now, as for bedding, now the only thing I do is mattress cover on each mattress and a fitted sheet. And then that's all I have to, I just wash the fitted sheet each time. Much easier than washing comforters and all that stuff. And
we try to make our camper an all-inclusive experience for our renter. And if you look at other ads, a lot of people charge for a lot of different things. We provide all the pots, pans, the chairs. A lot of people will charge extra for even camping chairs. They'll have like a dinner package where they'll charge $25 to have the paper plates. They charge extra for toilet paper. They charge extra for propane. We don't do that. We just have a couple little add-ons we do. Next year I'm going to add, if you want to leave our house with a full, the water tanks filled up, we'll charge $20 to fill up the water tanks, things like that. But we try to keep it simple because that's what we would like if we were renting a camper. Okay, so you have your ad out there, your camper's all ready to go. What's next? Okay, so somebody can book through Outdoorsy, they can book your camper one of two ways. They can, normally it would be set up where you'd have a booking request. So somebody sees your camper, they like it, they put in a request. Okay, so Outdoorsy will now connect you with that potential customer, and you have the opportunity to communicate with them and ask them questions. You might want to ask them what kind of car they're using, make sure it's able to tow your rig, where they're going, do they have pets, and then Outdoorsy will actually facilitate communication even via text. Now, it's nice they use like an anonymous number, so you're not like, you don't have their personal number, they don't have yours, but you're able to go back and forth with text. And we started out doing that, but since then we've made our description detailed enough so it answers a lot of those questions. So we've actually chosen to go with what's called instant booking, which means somebody finds your camper, they like it, they click book, it's done. It's reserved in the system. It's on your calendar as reserved. They're allowed to make that initial deposit, which lets them go forward with the process. All right, so once the booking has been finalized, you start communicating with your new customer. And it's important to start communication right away, because when you're a customer and you're actually looking at potential campers to rent, number one, you're going to see their rating, because the customers are able to rate the rentees 1 through 5 stars, and they can also see what the rentee's response time is. So it can range from within the hour to 1-2 days. We've really made it a priority to have really good communication with our customers, and if you look at our profile, our response time is within the hour. If I get a notification from Outdoorsy, I'm driving, I stop, I pull over, and I respond right away. So you want to start that communication, and even though it's in our ad, let's say we get a communication that, congratulations, your camper has been booked. We'll send a message right away saying, thanks for renting our camper, please reach out if you have any questions. Maybe we'll ask, what vehicle are you using, and what's your destination, just to get the discussion started. And then they might have additional questions, and then you start arranging pickup times. All right, now we can get into pickup time. How does that work? What does that look like? After you've communicated with your renter, you're going to establish a time for them to come out and pick up your camper. Now, when you do your ad, you'll actually put in the ad what time pickup time and drop-off time is. We actually add it in our description too. So we say pickup times are set up for noon, drop-off times are at noon. However, we are flexible for early pickup times and late drop-offs if scheduling allows it, our personal schedule, or maybe we have another renter coming out. And 9 times out of 10, we are totally fine with making that work. We're kind of blessed that Jamie's a stay-at-home mom. Almost every rental is a pickup on a Thursday, Friday, and drop off on a Sunday. So Jamie's usually home during the day. I only work 3 miles away. I have a flexible schedule where I can use my lunch break at different times and come over and help with the setup and help with the process. So it works pretty well. But okay, so you have a time set up with your customer to pick the camper up. All right, so they're gonna show up, and if you're lucky, they're gonna be on time. Sometimes they're late, sometimes they're early. But you meet them, and you want to have a process that is consistent, because there's several things you need to do when they pick up. Number one is you need to do a complete walk around to the outside and the inside of the camper. And you're doing 2 things there. Number one, you're going over damage. So there's going to be a form, like a damage waiver or a recorded damage, or we're going to walk around and we're going to show them all the damage that is there. And it might just be a scratch here, a scratch there. Our camper's pretty new, there's really no damage. But we also tell the customer too, these are the things we see. If you see anything, now is the time to put them down. Because if they return it with damage that is not documented, that could come out of their security deposit. And also with that walk around, you're going to be explaining how things work. A lot of people renting these campers don't have a lot of experience using them. So you want to be thorough with showing how things work. And I want to add this before I forget. I actually did a YouTube video too that describes how the camper works. It's kind of an instructional video for people that want to rent the camper out. And I actually have a link to that video in my ad, and I've had several people comment that they really liked that video and it was very helpful. Because number one, it gives you a nice tour of the camper you're going to rent, and then it can answer a lot of questions that they might have going forward on how to use things. And they can also, while they're camping, they can get on their phones or whatever and go back to the video and watch it like, oh yeah, that's where the sewer hose is, or that's how it works, whatnot. But okay, so you're going to do a walk around to the outside. You can do a walk around the inside. You're going to help them hook the camper up to their rig. You're going to do a safety check, checking the lights and making sure the signals work. And then you're going to sit down and do some paperwork. Outdoorsy.com does provide all the paperwork. And usually Jamie is the one that handles all that, so I'll let her talk about the paperwork.
So they have a lot of paperwork. It feels like a lot when the people come. So in general, you start out by walking around looking at the damage and writing down the current damage on the camper. And like he said, it's pretty new, so there's not much. So that way then when the camper comes back, if there's any other damage that hasn't been recorded, we can charge the renter if need be. And then there's sheets about, they have to sign a waiver saying they know that they're okay to use the awning or they're not allowed to use the awning, or it's okay to go on off-roading with the camper if need be. So there's just lots of waivers they sign. And then there's the rental contract, which is probably about 8 pages long. And some people like to read everything, and that's fine, but then the pickup process can take quite a bit longer. And some people are okay with what I do. I just use a highlighter and highlight the more important parts, the kind of the main idea of the sheet that they're signing. And I think people in general appreciate that because they don't want to sit there and read it. It's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, it's what, 10, 12 pages?
Yeah,
yeah.
That's only 12.
And it'd be a good idea for you to sit down and go over the paperwork yourself before the first rental happens. And I think what you do is you kind of summarize what each page is and then go on from there. But yeah, it's a lot of paperwork. But it's nice too. It's a nice peace of mind knowing that you are covered for anything that might happen because it's all in there. Okay, so now we can talk about your camper getting rented out. What's happening during that time? And the first time your camper leaves the driveway with somebody else, it's kind of a odd feeling. It's not the greatest feeling, you feel a little leery, some strangers using your brand new camper, but you get over that pretty quick. Big thing is to make yourself available. Almost every rental we've had, nearly almost every rental, there's been some questions, some communication that's happened during the rental, and a lot of times it's just really minor, like how do I use this again, or where's this, and it's not that big of a deal. And most of the communication happens with text. Like I said, Outdoorsy sets you up with an anonymous text number, but we just really make it very important to be available all the time. And I'll communicate with the renters too when we're not going to be available. A lot of times, they want to drop it off on a Sunday. We'll let them know that, hey, we're at church. We don't get back till 12:30. We're not going to be available for any questions during this time. But there's going to be some communications. There are going to be some issues that pop up. We've been pretty fortunate. There's been nothing that we haven't been able to get figured out over the phone or over text. We've never had to go to a campsite and resolve an issue, knock on wood. But just be available. Now, when somebody returns the camper, we talked about setting up a return time, and it's best to do that, before they even leave the house with the camper. Sometimes people need a little flexibility, they don't know when they're going to wrap things up at their campsite, and most times we are very open to a late drop-off. We say noon, but we've had people drop off 7, 8 o'clock at night, and that's fine. There's been a time or two where we've had our own camping trip where we're leaving on a Sunday and we need it back by a certain time, but we'll always work with people to make that happen. When they return the camper, this is your time to go over and make sure there's been no damage to the camper. And I think this is an area where we probably have gotten better at. We probably still need to be a little better at just kind of slowing down and really being thorough with our walk around. People are coming back and you can just tell by their vibe that they're just tired and they want to get going with the rest of their day and they got a long drive home. And it almost feels like offensive sometimes spending all this time looking for what they might have done wrong to your camper. But we were pretty lucky, but I was burned once because I didn't do a good walk around, and it wasn't until later I realized, oh man, that stabilizer jack is totally bent. And, you know, it's something I probably could have worked out with the customer to get fixed, but I missed it. So be very thorough. Try to do things the same way every time. And when you get back, there are a couple of forms too that they have to fill out. And again, you do those forms.
Yep. The return is much faster as far as paperwork goes. So obviously you go through and look for damage. If there's none, you sign off on the paperwork. And then you can go into your app and immediately return their security deposit to them. And that was one of those things that we slowly learned. I actually learned that you could do that by reading other people's reviews and saying how they were really thrilled at how fast they got their security deposit back. So the way it works is if you don't release their security deposit, Outdoorsy will release it in 7 days automatically unless you put a claim into Outdoorsy. So it's just a nice feature to be able to, you know, as they're leaving your house, you can release the security deposit to them.
And we normally do that. There was only one time where we held a security deposit. Somebody brought the camper back with some damage. I'll talk about that in a minute. And I held it for another day or two while I figured out how I was going to fix this problem and if it was really going to cost me any money. It ended up, it didn't, and I gave it back to them 100%. But you do have that ability to hold it if you need to. And when you drop it off too, we like to ask them to give us a rating. Ratings are very important. I mean, think about when you buy a product or going to go to a hotel or whatnot. You always look to see what that rating is, and we really strive for a 5-star rating, and we're fortunate that we do have a 5-star rating. But it doesn't hurt to ask for it. You know, these people, they rented your camper, they want to move on. I don't know, more times than not, I would think people would probably just go on with their lives and not do a rating. But if you ask for it, I don't know, we've had people follow through and do it.
One thing about ratings too is it's hard when you have no ratings yet and you're just starting out. You know how we all work. We go past that camper or whatever, that restaurant, because
they're new, they're unknown.
Yeah, they could be horrible. Try and be flexible at first, because the way we got our first rental on Outdoorsy was a lady that was using it for a music festival. There are a lot of people out there that say they will not rent out for festivals, which we totally get. But because we were open to it, you know, we just wanted to get ourselves out there. We ended up with a teacher and a principal that were renting our camper for a country music festival, and they do it every year, and it worked out great. And then on RV Share, we got our first rental because we were ones still renting it out in November, because we do have a little more insulation than some, and there were just not a lot of campers left. So we were able to get our first rental on RV Share that way and get our first rating. So we only have one rating on there, but at least it helps, because I think that's hard. You know, that's where the good pictures come into play, because you don't have the ratings out there as proof that it's a good camper yet. Be flexible at first if you can, and like we said, get great pictures.
So Outdoorsy has this thing called InstaMatch, and I'll actually let Jamie explain it. She knows more about it than I do.
Yeah, so when we first started out, we kept getting these notifications of Instant Match or InstaMatch, and we were all excited, like someone wants to book our camper. And we slowly learned that that's just people that are looking around, putting dates out there, seeing what they'll be charged, and they're not fully booking your camper or anything. And on top of it, they're not a great match, because Outdoorsy calls it InstaMatch, but a lot of them were looking for toy haulers or
even a fifth wheel.
Much bigger, fifth wheel, much bigger trailers than ours were. So they didn't really match at all. And here I was personally messaging each one of these people, and they're getting slammed by all of us rentees that are getting these InstaMatches, and that would be annoying. And then on top of it, if you send these InstaMatch people a quote for your camper, Outdoorsy automatically pops it onto your calendar and says pending reservation. So you've got this mess of a calendar, and the InstaMatches aren't really InstaMatches. You know, some, I think we've only had one that actually worked out. RV Share, as we're learning, they have Smart Match. Same deal with theirs. It's not a very smart match.
Yeah, they could tweak the system a little bit. Like Jamie mentioned, part of your account, you have a calendar, and it's laid out pretty well. When you get a confirmed booking, it'll show up in orange or, I forget what color it is. And then when you want to reserve the camper for yourself, you enter those dates, and you get a really nice visual snapshot of what your upcoming weeks and months look like. But it gets messed up with this Instant Match because, like she said, as soon as you send them a quote, it pops up on your calendar as a potential rental. And I don't know, I just wish they would tweak it, fix it, and I don't know, just make it a little more...
A better match.
Yeah, better match. Anyways, moving on. So now we can talk about how much money we made. So we essentially had it rented out for 4 months. There were 4 weekends where it was not available for our own personal use. We ended up making, after the Outdoorsy fees, $2,416. We made an additional $171 through RV Share, through one rental there. Expenses, when we started out, we spent about $300 in bedding, buying some chairs and some storage containers. Propane, there's probably a high estimate, maybe $45. That's some of our own use too with propane. So that gives us a total. We made $2,242, which to us was a surprise. We didn't think we'd make that much money doing this. We just thought it would be a now and again deal, but it's turned out to be well worth it. And in fact, going into this next year, 2020, we're going to commit our Mallard 100% to rentals, and we're going to buy a second camper, a larger camper to use for our family, but we'll also rent that out too. And we kind of want to turn this into a little side business. Before, we just kind of had our account tied into our personal checking. We're going to have a separate checking account just for the rental income, and if there's expenses, we'll take out of that account. And yeah, we're going to make this into a little side business, and we should be able to get a brand new camper and have it 100% paid for. So let's talk about some pros and cons. Pro number one, obviously, it's a good source of revenue. Number two, even though that first time somebody's taking your camper out, it's not the greatest feeling in the world. After a while, it's kind of a good feeling that your camper is getting used. I mean, we use our camper about 5 times a year, which I think is an okay amount, but it sits in your backyard a lot, just not getting used. And there's just something about people enjoying it getting used that just makes you feel good. And we actually put a little journal in our camper, kind of like a fill in the blank type thing of where you've been, what you liked, what campsites you went to. And most people fill it out, and it's kind of fun to, read through their journals and learn about their experiences, and just knowing that people are enjoying the camper is a good feeling. Some cons, well, obviously there's going to be some wear and tear. Your camper is getting used. Our camper still had that new camper smell until about our third rental. Somebody brought it back, and you could tell like they had spilled something. We think something big fell out of the fridge while they were driving, because they had to use some heavy duty cleaners to clean it up. And like the next day, you could kind of see in a certain light where the splatter marks were. It wasn't horrible, but it just it wasn't that new camper anymore. We haven't had a lot of damage, but we have had a couple things that I want to talk about. I talked about that stabilizer jack. That wasn't that big of a deal. We did have a scary one. We had somebody about 2 hours into the rental call us and say they had a brand new black Chevy Suburban. And they said, we just drove through some wet road paint, some white road paint. It splattered all along not only our Suburban, but your camper too. What do we do? And I don't know what to do with wet road paint. So I'm kind of panicking. I'm online trying to figure out, how do you get rid of fresh road paint, and all the resources I found said, well, you got to get to a pressure washer right away and spray it off. So I call him back. I'm like, okay, you got to get to a pressure washer and spray it off. He's like, I did that. It's not coming off. So I'm like, shoot. So I'm like, I'm going to keep looking into this. You look into this. We'll get it figured out. So as I'm researching it, he actually called back and said, hey, I found a place that details RVs. It's on the way to my campsite. I'm going to stop by and see if they can take care of it. And they did. He had it professionally detailed. I think it cost him like $400 to get his truck and our camper, get that paint removed. But it wasn't any money out of our pocket. They have to return the camper in the same condition that they took it from. So if he would have had to have filed an insurance claim, that deductible would have been on him, or he would have had to pay for the damages. We were able to work through that. It wasn't, the camper came back in great condition. There was a couple little spots that you could tell, but it wasn't that bad. Another damage that we had a couple take our camper all the way to North Dakota, and they came back and said that they had put a large case of water on the back bunk. And with all the vibrations of the camper going up and down the road, that the weight of the water broke apart that back bunk. And these bunks are not put together very well. Really small staples, light wood. I'll splice in some video here of me doing that repair. And if you want more details on why I think that thing broke the way it did, you can look at I did a owner's review on this camper. I think there was a defect in how they manufactured the bracing for that bunk, but that's a long story. But that's the security deposit that I held on to. I just wanted to see if that was going to cost me anything. It ultimately didn't. It took me some time, but I had to spend a couple hours. I had to take that whole bed apart and kind of remake it. But once it was done, I was actually able to put some extra bracing in there, and it's actually more stronger than it was before. But besides that, there hasn't been a lot of cons. You were going to talk about the app for the phone isn't the greatest.
Yeah, so working with a website is a lot easier than the app. My app's a little bit goofy where, okay, so he told you we made around $2,000. Well, I go on the app, and initially it said we made $2,000 and listed off all our rentals we had. And then I'd go on it, and each time there'd just be a random amount. Mm-hmm. So right now my phone says we've made like $198 out of all the rentals we had, which is totally inaccurate. And then you can't get to all the rental documents that you need to print off, which initially I thought you could, because you go into the booking and they show you, here's your rental contract, here's your damage information that you have to print off. Well, if you go to the website, you can also print off a temporary insurance card, and you can't see any of that on their app. So the app isn't the greatest. Like we've said, we didn't work with RV Share very much, but I'm already finding that their app is easier to work with, and they email you the documents that you actually need to print off. Where Outdoorsy doesn't do that. RV Share emails you everything you need to print off, which is super great.
So quickly talk about some things that we didn't expect doing this. Obviously the demand. I did not expect there to be such a strong demand for trailer rentals up here, but a lot of people like to rent. Maybe they don't want the expense of buying their own camper. They don't have a place to store it. We've had some people that they wanted to buy a camper, but they didn't know if they wanted a travel trailer or motorhome, so they're kind of renting each to find out. A lot of demand. And I was surprised too, like we're both planners. If we were going to rent an RV, go camping, we'd probably book that thing a month or two out. We did have some that booked a ways out, but most rentals were like less than 2 weeks out. There was a lot of last minute bookings that kind of surprised me. But then on the flip side of that, one of the only weekends we did not rent it out was on Labor Day weekend, which I was really surprised at that. But then again, holidays, you probably do need to plan well in advance. In Minnesota, if you want to get into a campground on a holiday, you got to book that out a year in advance. So maybe that's what was going on there. Next year, I'm guessing our holidays will be booked out. I was surprised that most people that rent are newbies. They don't have a lot of camping experience. It wasn't uncommon for me to be helping somebody hook up the camper to their car for the first time ever. People that had never used a water system in an RV, and there's just a lot of novice people that will rent out your camper. That's why it's very important to have a good detailed description, good instructions, and be available for those questions. Another thing that surprised me was how late into the season up here in Minnesota people like to go camping. I thought after August, I didn't know if we'd get any rentals, like maybe one in September, maybe, but we had rentals all the way into November. And one thing I forgot about, hunters. Hunting season can be a time for people to rent campers. Our last rental of the year was a hunter that needed it mid-November. So I think I took the camper off availability in mid-November. Next year I might keep it till the end of November. But yeah, the season is a lot longer than I thought it would be. So that's been our experience renting out our camper. Overall, it's been a good experience. We're going to continue doing it. And if you have any questions, anything that we missed, anything you would have done different, feel free to leave a comment. We'll make sure we respond. And subscribe too, because we're going to do another video after using both Outdoorsy and RV Share more. We'd like to do a comparison, which one works better. And we want to share more experiences maybe halfway through the season in 2020. And we're also buying a new camper. We're going to be going to the Minneapolis RV show here in February. We're going to bring a checkbook. We have a couple models picked out, and we're going to do some videos on picking out our new camper. And yeah, we have a lot more coming up, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this helped you out, and we'll see you next time.